Hi, welcome to today's session. Today we're talking about jumping into the river of your big picture. And I specifically named it that so that you could think about just what is that thing where you're standing at the edge of a cliff and you jump really deeply into a pool of cold water. And that's your water and that's your big picture, and you're sort of swimming in what your big picture is. So I'll repeat all of this because I know what happens at the beginning of a show, of one of these live broadcasts. You all come in after about 30 seconds in. We are here Monday to Friday. Next week, we're here with guests every day of the week except Wednesday when it's me. So every day of the week, you're going to get a panel or an individual speaker. All right, let's start with today. As you know, these are work remote strategies. So what things can help you with your work and with your life? And today we're going to talk about priorities. We're going to talk about how you find your priorities, reach them. Yesterday, we talked about moving forward in your career. So today, let's talk about how we can figure out those priorities and what they are for us. All right, imagine that I'm starting with all of you right from the beginning. Jumping into the river of your big picture. Imagine that you're standing at the top of a cliff and it's a little further down than you might be used to, but you know you can do it. And imagine you jump into that cool but refreshing river. And suddenly you get this aha of this is my big picture. This is what I'm supposed to do with the next 5 years of my life, the next 3, 5, 10, 20 years of my life. Your big picture. A lot of times we say, I know I'm generally going in the direction of my big picture. So today is about how do you actually find it? How do you get closer to your big picture? Here's the model we're going to use today. We're going to use the model of time, space, and the idea fairy. I'll tell you what the idea fairy is in a moment. So time, how do you get the time to jump into your big picture and really get what it is that you're going towards most in life? The time, the space, physically, mentally, emotionally, how do you get that space? And the idea fairy. And I think I'm thinking about fairies because I have 2 young kids and we read a lot of books and tell a lot of stories about magical fairies who help you get amazing ideas and those little nudges that push you off the ground. All right, so let's take each of these 3 one at a time. I'll give you some specific concepts and then push back at me. Tell me what works, what doesn't work. Give me your questions and your comments. So first of all, please comment if you already know what your big picture goal is. So let me know if you're one of those people. Do you already know what your big picture goal is? And if you do, what is it? So drop them into the comments. I want to hear your big picture goal. Brag. Tell me. Let me know what your big picture goal is. I'm going to keep the comments open and I'll be looking at them. So for all of us who generally know and want to get a little more clarity, let's start with time. Time. As you see next to time, you'll sometimes see me doing this in frameworks. I'll put 2 dots that mean there are 2 different kinds of time we want to be thinking about. One kind of time is actual time, and that's really important, and we need to do actual time. And this, you need to actually devote actual time. Excuse me for just one moment. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Thank you for your patience. All right, so let's go to time. You may know that we're all working from home, and there are a few things that may come in and out of the door, so I needed to mute for a moment. All right, we're at time, space, and the idea fairy. Time. There are 2 different kinds of time that you are going to need if you want to get to what is my big picture and what is the goal? Where am I going in my life? And those 2 kinds of time are actual time. That could mean setting aside buckets of time. So I'm going to go for a walk for an hour and just think through some of the things that I've been mulling over, figuring out the direction I'm most going in. And it's also doing nothing time. So I'd like to emphasize this doing nothing time. And that is included here with the second dot. So the first dot is actual time and the second dot is doing nothing time. What is doing nothing time? Let me give you some examples. Sitting in a hammock with no book or anything and just looking up at the sky. It is taking a shower or a bath, just letting the water run over you. That is nothing time. It's those moments before you fall asleep that can be nothing time. It's going for a walk by yourself. Sometimes it can even be kind of zoning out to a series that you're watching when you know it's you just know it already, or watching something for the second time. So know that Nothing time is critical. There's a lot of research on this thing in the back of our heads called level D thinking. And if we put a problem back in the back of our heads, it actually can get mulled over and worked on, even when we're not actively working on it. So to move forward to your big picture and your main goals, focus on time, space, and the idea fairy. With time, there are two kinds of time. Actually devote the time to it. Let's say going for a walk 2 times a week for an hour each time. And do nothing time. I invite you to nothing time. Please do nothing time soon, this weekend. Bring some nothing time to yourself. Nothing time can be sitting around with a book. It can be sitting around with your kids, with your spouse. All right, space. So we talked about time, space. People often get more inspired where they're in a specific space. There was a time when I was working on writing a novel, and what I read in terms of getting a novel out in 20 days is make yourself that space. Put on an item of clothing that your character may be wearing. Light a candle that's like what your character may be smelling, a scent in the story. Get something around you. So consider that there are a lot of important buildings that are sacred spaces. What is a space that you can create for yourself? You may notice that I looked outside when I said that. Maybe it's that space in one part of your side yard. Maybe it's a part of the house. Maybe it's even a small space. Maybe you actually make a tiny space for yourself underneath, even, I'm going to pretend that you're a kid, underneath a table, and you're making a fort. You just get in there and you just have that moment to yourself. So I know in some ways this may sound funny, but you've already been doing this in some parts of your life. You've often, previous to the past few months, you've gone to a cafe and you've sat there and you've had your alone time. Or sometimes people even go driving for hours just to get that space where they can have these thoughts about the big picture and what you're really here to contribute to you, to your family, and to the world. Okay, so we've talked about time, actual time, and do nothing time. We've talked about space, which is what is your location? What is a possible location for you to use? And now my favorite of these topics, which is the idea fairy. What is an idea fairy? You may be asking me. Senia, what is an idea fairy? How do you use it? This is not a business concept, this idea fairy. Well, it might not be a business concept because we use rule number 6 a lot here. This was popularized by Ben Zander, I think created by him, which is the idea of be silly. Don't take yourself too seriously. So here's the idea fairy. Again, we're talking about time, space, and the idea fairy. And for the idea fairy, here are about 5 different things that I'll rattle off, ways that you can get ideas and nudges that can steer you towards your main priority. All right, one is you can go to an online conference. There are lots of these, these days, and they're mostly free. And sometimes when you're listening to people speak or a panel, even now as you're listening to me speak, you may get ideas. So put something into your head. It could be a TED Talk, could be a live conference where you're getting ideas that are a little different from what you get every day. That's one way. Another is talking to a friend. Oh my gosh, just talking, maybe even doing socially distanced walking with a friend, but do something with somebody you may not have seen. A third idea is what I really love, these mastermind groups. Get together with a group of people and just tell them, here's my challenge, here's what I'm thinking through. But actually do it purposefully, because we have a group of people that we tend to meet every day for work. But what if you expand your group a little bit? What if you look for the people that you really want to be meeting with in order to expand your ideas? Other ways to do this are, like I've mentioned before, I don't even mean this to be silly, but take a long walk, take a bath, those kinds of things. Get into a book. These can be idea fairies. They can bring up ideas that you haven't thought of before. So to summarize, a way to jump into the river of your big picture is by doing time, space, and idea fairy and keeping these present in your life. Time is to look at both actual time, devote some chunks on your calendar towards doing that big picture thinking of where am I going towards. And the second dot on that time is nothing time. So remember nothing time. That's when you're just lounging out doing nothing. So time, actual, and nothing time. Space, what is your space? What is your space in your home? Maybe just outside your home. What's that thing like a cafe that is for you, the place where you can get ideas? And then your idea fairy, what can nudge you? What can trigger you? What can give you more ideas than you had 2 minutes ago? What can give you more ideas 2 minutes into the future? So there you have it. 3 ways of thinking about how to get to the bigger, deeper picture of what you want. Thank you for joining us.